sharing it out. I'm going to go a little earlier tonight. Hopefully I fixed the stupid problem with the mic. That was so bad. I don't know if it was brushing up against the thing or what. But, you know, I'm not exactly 100% pro here, guys. Throw this in the cord, and we'll go off. Gonna do a little two. Oh, man. Cord is taking an epoch to start up. All right. We hope Discord can be helpful in these times. Man, that's one thing I need so much less of is fucking companies sending these platitudinal emails telling me they're fucking here for me. You ain't here for anybody. That shit is fucking washed. And that sucks, but what are you gonna fucking do? Nice Tintin poster. Yeah, I have a shitload of them. That's only one. I have like 5 Tintin posters because I worked at the publisher who did all those compendiums. So I have the Blue Lotus, which is even better. But that's actually upstairs. I have like a bunch of the t-shirts too. How am I doing? I don't know. I'm okay. So we were clearly not like done about 1983, right? Because one of the key themes is that Privet, Kagdala, one of the big themes is that by 83, the notion of selling out like becomes a real thing. It had been talked about in, you know, the past at various points. But there was really not a reasonable or practicable alternative. You couldn't truly do it yourself until kind of the late 70s when all these English labels and things started up. You know, Jeff Travis, Rough Trade, Stiff, obviously Factory comes shortly thereafter. In America, the history of like independent or new actors, you know, it was more like what you had seen with Virgin or Island. You know, you had A&M Records and to an extent Elektra, and like they're just starting a new record label that's got a different outlook or a more modern, you know, kind of. Oh, wait a minute. Was it not plugged all the way in? Hopefully the audio is okay. It looks like it is. You know, this whole idea of you kind of taking your ball and going home and putting out your own records. It doesn't really make much sense. It's not like working. Basically, you just have like new young A&R people like or younger, like Chris Perry, you know, at Polydor, and you know, wannabes like you know, Balf and stuff. I talked about Bill Drummond and how Echo and the Bunnymen blew up. And I mean, Porcupine, this year's album for them was actually a lot of critics were like, this is so fucking boring. And like in 83, a lot of the critics died. Where, you know, folks like Paul Morley, let's say, you know, he had started out as this big champion of Joy Division and was super, you know, suspicious of any, you know, major label backed act coming out of New Wave, like The Cure, who he famously trashed. But by 83, he's working with the production team that is, you know, Trevor Horn's whole crew, the Fairlight CMI people, JJ Jeslek, and what's his name, Langan. I talked about this. I did a whole video about this. You can Google it. Someone's put it back up again about, you know, The Art of Noise, ZTT, the record label they started on top of this. They just started their own label out of just, oh yeah, we'll just make a label. While they were in the studio working for these incredibly expensive, you know, massive chart aimed, you know, bands, you know, Malcolm McLaren's Duck Rock, they were working on that at the same time. And then Yes's 90125, they went in there like thinking of themselves as kind of, pirates or something that were going to take advantage of the printing press after hours and print their own books, kind of a thing. And they went in and they made Into Battle with the Art of Noise, which came out in late 83. And it's funny, 83 screams New Order. It screams, the Hacienda's been open for a year. I think it opened in May 82. But, Blue Monday, it screams them. And also, actually, I never pulled this out. I had it at the back of the stack, but this is the actual original 1983 promo of Confusion on Streetwise, which actually also came out in 83. And this is like massively just New Order went to New York, went in a studio with Arthur Baker, set up a bunch of shit, and went off. And Jelly Bean Benitez actually he mixed this with Arthur Baker, the original Confusion mix. We were talking on the court earlier today about the 87 Substance version of Temptation and how, I and a lot of people who first heard that, whether it was at the time in the 80s or through Trainspotting, the soundtrack to Trainspotting, a lot of people really prefer how well that 87 version sounds. But, the stands that were around then and are like guardians and slightly older than me even, were repulsed by that version of Temptation and of Confusion too. And they only want the original. But to me, I mean, the drum machines were just so primitive that the melodic kind of through line of Temptation is really almost lost in the original. Because at that time, the really early New Order stuff for me is like Procession is one of my favorites, and Everything's Gone Green is my absolute favorite, because Everything's Gone Green is like the moment when you get indie guitar and drum machines and electronics together. I mean, I fully lay that at New Order's feet, because everyone else was kind of one or the other. The novelty of the electronic and synth aspect of the music, especially when sequencers come in, overtakes and becomes the dominant aspect of almost all of this music in the early 80s, like the Human League, etc. New Order stayed kind of down the line and kept the bass and hooky and everything in the mix. And that's what was so unique about them, apart from Blue Monday, which really, it's in there, but it almost sounds like a cowboy joke. Hookie's bass in Blue Monday, where something like Everything's Gone Green it's just F A minor G. I think it literally, and it's major chords, because Barney can't really play guitar. So so there's this aspect again. So you've got that, right? But when Morley and Trevor Horn's crew are doing the Art of Noise, it's like a pretty decadent joke based on privilege, yet they create two really incredibly powerful songs in Beatbox and Moments in Love. And that EP is, just phenomenally good. Into Battle with the Art of Noise. And the full length, Who's Afraid Of, which comes out in 84, is also great. But it's this ability to, if you look particularly at America, America's never even had the concept of punk as like a thing, really, apart from extremely underground, isolated, metropolitan kind of scenes. The idea of a national sort of fabric of this, of touring, get in the van, the way Black Flag were doing, you have to give Black Flag credit for kind of evangelizing this whole thing, the whole model, down to the label with SST. And that's, it's clear that that's, where Discord comes from. And it's such a knowable process in England already that, like I said, the critics are like tired of it. And all these magazines that have come up due to this outsized interest in, pop music conceptually and new pop, as they called it, new pop, versus the new romantics, which is slightly more of an 81, 82 term. By 83, you're talking Duran, almost immediately Imperial, world famous bands. Lexicon of Love is a big part of it. And that's another one of the records they were working on at the same time when they did Art of Noise. It was Lexicon of Love, Duck Rock, and 90125. But 90125 took like a year to fucking finish. Well, they banged out Lexicon of Love and they banged out Duck Rock and then they banged out the Art of Noise record because they had so much fucking time. Because Yes is just like fucking, making it rain. They have all the fucking money in the world. So this, this underground is really, you've also had some big acts in America. We watched Erg on the chord, like the Cramps. one of the big ones is Misfits, and Misfits break up in '83, and they're a band that breaks up right at their kind of peak of public consciousness, where like say Fear, a band like Fear, which is also extremely confrontational and yada yada yada, they shot their load on the first record, and by the time they do More Beer, it's like, yeah, dude, we already heard this joke. They're a novelty band, right? Misfits were not a novelty band. They wrote great retro rock and roll, great American, reverb laden slap spring reverb rock and roll, American Nightmare and all these just classic, rock and roll and rockabilly songs. The thing is in '83, Doyle almost kills a kid in San Francisco at the Fillmore. He splits a kid's fucking head open with his guitar. He literally almost killed this kid. And nobody really remembers this. I mean, everybody on the West Coast does. Like, they were banned from ever playing, like, What Becomes Gilman and shit, because all those people, those scenesters who had built this West Coast scene, remembered that, like, the Misfits are the band that came here and, like, beat the shit out of the scrawniest kid in the crowd and then almost killed this other kid. So, Danzig has said in various places that incident was so awful for him, and it was so over the top, because he taught Doyle how to play guitar. Like, Doyle joined in '80, and he was really like a, under Danzig's wing in so many ways, and he was a fucking teenager. Like, when he does this, I don't even know if he's 19 or 20, and it's like the Sid Vicious thing all over again. He's so brainwashed and invested in the myth of the Misfits that he thinks he's got to be super fucking badass and beat everybody up and whatever. And he literally splits a guy's head open and his fucking scalp peels off. Like, it's fucking horrible. The guy could have died. And so that's really, according to Danzig, why he kind of calls it, and starts Sam Hain and the rest of this stuff. But yeah, exactly. Doyle was just a kid, like sort of like Tommy from Replacements, right? But my point being, the really early outliers, Germs, Misfits, Cramps. Cramps are a little too, again, kind of a novelty thing to really be counting against. Similar to how the Dead Kennedys are so overtly, gonzo with the politics and the kind of almost Oingo Boingo persona of Jello. The notion of like non-novel, non-image based independent music, whether it's punk or whatever, it starts to take shape. You have some standout new voices. We mentioned briefly Plimsolls had a big hit in Million Miles Away this year. So it's not that there's one hit wonders in the mainstream. There's also college rock starting to become this thing where the idea of new and independent music getting service and getting heard and not being part of the boring, REO Speedwagon shit on the radio. And the extent too that, I'm in college, I don't listen to Cyndi Lauper and whatever. That's like kids music. I have my like sophisticated 20 something cool. This is starting to come up. And it's also like the absolute peak of the first thrust of, you got to get your kids into a spiffy college kind of a thing. That was just, going to a good college was like a thing rich people did in terms of managing their children's lives. Like, it wasn't available to just anybody. It wasn't even, nobody even fucking thought about it. But gradually in the mid 70s, these liberal arts campuses start realizing like, we need to get a lot more money going here. And that this rush to get like just generic yuppie, upwardly mobile suburban people to get their kids to start putting their kids, to get them to start putting their kids in college. This is like a new thing. The reason there are so many Russians is we have a huge shoegaze community and your videos are very popular, especially when Beautiful Noise came out and disappointed everyone. Your videos were praised in contrast. That's very funny. I did have some discussions with the Beautiful Noise crew, and I mean, I applaud them for trying to do that. I had told them, I was like, anything you're going to get is such ancient history to the people that could be talking about it that it's just going to them basically like what Robert Smith's get was in that movie was he was like, I love the Cocteau Twins. I used to listen to them all the time. It was an amazing sound. I don't know how you make a documentary about that. I think you need the critical aspect of it. You need to go through all the players. But do I like jazz? No, I don't. I like some more Ornette Coleman records that I heard when I was learning to play drums, and I love like the Chet Baker sort of stuff that, what people would call sort of, loungy or pop more probably, but like hardcore jazz, it's just not my thing. I've never been into it. I mean, like some of the math rock I've liked would qualify probably as jazz, but no, it's jazz is a massive blank spot. I mean, all the blank spots that critics always have are blank spots generally for me. I mean, I think that whole thing I've been going off on in the early 80s about country pop and Eddie Rabbitt and all that shit. I don't think anybody has either owned up to or had that kind of a fascination with the music like that, because, country, hip hop, and jazz are the things that, fucking white critics never know shit about. Or they pretend to know more than they do. I mean, again, it's silly, but yeah, no, jazz is better for the players in the audience. Yeah, Stuart Copeland, and then Tony Wilson has that apocryphal thing that's in 24-Hour Party People. It's what you do when you can't get a gig. No one, they enjoy themselves far more than the audience. He is reputed to have said that. That's why it was saved and kind of interred and ended up in his book of the film and the film itself. But I do actually agree with it. I'm a huge hip hop fan. I just mean that I don't address it critically, and I don't purport to, again, I'm be such a tourist. I've always been a tourist of hip hop. It's the voice and the culture and the racial background that it's coming from is fucking nothing to do with me. And I'm not like going to start doing backflips because like LP is fucking cool or Run the Jewels is like hip. Like it doesn't mean shit to me. I just, or like, I fucking loved Spooky Black when that shit came out. I thought that kid, I just thought it was beautiful. And now he goes by Corbin, right? And he's still active. But, I'm not saying that hip hop is necessarily has to be a racially divided thing. To me, the kind of stuff I like is like extremely representative of sort of Black African-American, cultural issues, and that sort of commitment and the presence of the author and the rapper. That is, it's like you can hear when music is good and real and like going off. Like you can feel Chuck D's, kind of deep chested rage and sort of righteousness in the three big, massive, Sweep Public Enemy records. And those records, we used to blare them all the time. But like, we're basically rich white kids in the suburbs. So you got to know what and where you kind of, Corbin has been pretty inconsistent. You're right. But like, I mean, he's got 10 songs. If you put them all on a playlist, it's just like gold. Anyway, so without getting totally off track, the reason I'm splitting 83 up is that there's a lot of perceptible changes that happen in 83, and they're all kind of fighting each other. So there's all this money to be made in advertising. So all these new UK magazines that have sprung up, because Spin magazine isn't even out yet. That doesn't come out till 85. You have nothing but Rolling Stone and zines, if they even are any, in America. There's no alternative voice for you whatsoever, because the market hasn't revealed itself at a scope or a scale that would justify that kind of servicing. But it has in England, but it did so quickly, and the money was there for labels to advertise to this captive audience, because it's very affordable to buy a magazine. It's a lot more affordable to buy a magazine that can help you figure out which of these 10 records you should spend the money you can't afford on. So, in England, this is a pretty solid value proposition for kids who can't afford to go out and just buy everything and take a chance on it. Because most of the time they're over there, they're listening to the record in the store before they buy it to figure out if it's any good. So a lot of these new magazines, like the Smash Hits and the Face, well, the Face comes a bit later, but Melody Maker's readership's going up, and the NME really has a massive pivot to service this, because they've been really on the fence during punk. This just creates this entirely new motion where the idea of, going to a major, making commercial moves can be rejected, and you can potentially support yourselves and control every aspect of the, production and promotion or lack thereof of your music. And this just because of the size regionally, geographically, of England, this is possible, that you can make these choices, and you can be crass, and you can be, acts that reject all this. And it creates a really strange tension, because there's not much of a suggestion that the bands that do blow up, like Culture Club and Duran, well, no, Duran was completely derided as a bunch of, whatever. But, you know, there's no question that there's a direct lineage with Boy George and even John Moss was in the band London. Like, these guys were there and they were all through punk, and they're just, you know, getting their echo on the tail end of it. It's like Morrissey, right? He's there. Morrissey's a late bloomer. He doesn't get anything really going together for a bit. And their first album and their first steps are extremely hesitant. But then they're playing the Hacienda, and Hatful of Hollow material is just like fucking hit after hit after hit. Girl Afraid, fucking Still Ill. All the Hatful of Hollow is just perfect. That compilation, that era of early Smiths is just, goddamn. I mean, Back to the Old House is just everybody. That's, you know, the ultimate. Cream's like, that's Black Sabbath, and that's not. They didn't. America totally failed to service any of the new wave shit. We didn't. It was not really working. Anyways, you know, Jeff Travis and Rough Trade, they've got their thing going, right? And this ends up becoming called the Cartel, because basically all of the strong indies in England just get together and form a protectorate, a syndicate. And that's a way that other indies are able to enter, like Alan McGee and Creation Records, and get sort of jump on this sub tier. It's very much a definitively underground tier, mimicking the same sort of actions as this, but on a much lower economic and sort of popular scale. Peel session of This Charming Man, should have put the single version on instead. Disagree. I actually love the Peel session version of This Charming Man. So, you know, when you look across it, as I said at the top, the press in England, a lot of these magazines are looking at, you know, they're excited that New Order is doing dance music because they're tired of the Raincoat Brigade. They're tired of The Cure and Pornography and Echo and the Bunnymen and these moaning, miserable, you know, gray bands that are just not exciting. They want music to be fun again, new pop. And it becomes a major fracture. And someone else had mentioned in one of these videos how Gary Bushell was stumping at this time for Oi, which is an incredibly regressive and in some cases, you know, nationalist problem, because that whole thing was unresolved as well. You know, from the 70s, the National Front and all the white nationalism in England kind of never ever goes away, because again, UKIP is about the same. So yeah, I mean, if you go across, you know, Porcupine, we talked about the Chameleons. 83 is, a lot of people are feeling like this whole thing is just, like I said, boring. And when you got, you know, ABC and even Orange Juice, the notion of like rockism is coined around this time. And it really was a broad-based thing. And it would, you know, like any term, it was used, you know, kind of variously, and some places it makes sense, and if some places it doesn't. But this whole thing of morally becoming like a cop, and you know, trying to figure out the approved way to move out of, you know, the underground, that whole process just it created this really obvious division. And it accelerated a process that may have lasted a little bit longer and been healthier for a lot of, I like the New York mix of This Charming Man too. It would have been healthier for probably music writ large if this had not been, you know, turned into such a binary debate, predominantly by critics. And the media attention is one of the biggest things that makes this stuff flame out faster than it would have in the past. I mean, Christ, look at the Pistols, right? I mean, you get consumed more quickly. The more people are aware of you and are reacting to everything you do, there's a kind of exhaustion that naturally occurs there. You only have so much juice as a, you know, musical concern or pop proposition. And it either gets, you know, doled out over a long time, like an Elvis Costello or an REM, and you have this slow burn and growth and, you know, a steady fan base that grows with you. You do it in a way that doesn't alienate them, you know, there are plenty of examples of artists that have had long, fruitful careers, whether through, the kind of Bowie type changes. But in most cases, those changes don't work, and they're not either timed right or, mapped out in a way that the audience responds to. It's a weird thing because, Bowie like dies 4 different times in his career. He ceases to become relevant for pretty significant stretches of his career. So even someone like him, who's the arch chameleon, you can point to periods where he was totally fallow and nothing was hitting with anyone. So interesting thing for a couple of acts around this time. So The Cure start getting chart hits, and it's really kind of crazy that a band that was so typical of goth, Robert Smith's putting lipstick around his eyes, on the Pornography tour, the 14 Explicit Moments tour, and just this relentlessly miserable, punishing music, really of 2 full albums in Faith and Pornography, but it just sold really well. It had this big audience, and goth was huge. Dear Prudence comes out in 83 here for Susie, and then Robert joins the band, and but he's having all these hits that he's never had before, and somehow this pivot happens. And this guy who's been, 6 months earlier, this arch, giant, spiky-haired goth, kingpin, is like wearing shades, cut the hair shorter, beads, flowers, all this shit, and doing disco pop singles like Let's Go to Bed, The Walk, funny, big acid songs. I mean, his thing, he says, is that he just started doing acid all the time. And I don't know, that's part of it. He also, joins the Banshees and bails them out when John McGeoch's alcoholism, completely destroys him. And so Smith bails them out just as he had when they were first starting. And so he's spending all this time with Steve Severin partying, and Susie and Budgie are in love, and they go off and do The Creatures. So Severin and Smith get their own back, and they go do the Gloves' Blue Sunshine, which, is not a success commercially. But, alongside all this activity, it's an unbelievably creative, fertile period, I guess, at least of activity, if not of quality, for Smith, The Cure, the Banshees, and their side projects. But, The Walk and Blue Monday have this little mini controversy where they're using, descending drum tom loops, fills and all this stuff. And, if anything, Smith is like making fun of exactly this kind of music and the onset of dinky synthesized shit. I don't know that I've ever heard him say a bad word about the Human Leagues of the world or whatever, but it does seem like, there's a pretty big through line of him sticking the likes of George Michael and maybe even ABC in the eye and Spandau. I think he resented aristocratically kind of like Spandau and ABC, they looked like they were playing, Cambridge Lawn Party or something, and it was just fabulous decadence and those famous photographs of what do they call it? The Sloane Rangers shit. I mean, that whole period of posh, Darling, Princess Di, alcoholism and coke and all that bullshit. I think he was thumbing his nose at a lot of the instamatic nature of electronic music, and trying to have fun with it. And he just had a deep obsession with psychedelia. And that is completely injected into Blue Sunshine, which, again, no hits. Chris Perry wouldn't let him sing on it. And it's just such a fucking shame that they never had the kind of wherewithal or foresight to record his vocals at the time and just put him in a closet and not tell Chris Perry. Because if we'd been able to get, an actual 1983 Robert Smith vocal take all over that record, it would be unbelievable. Like, it's better than Head on the Door with him singing on it in the right voice. Because what we got was a bullshit, re-recording of his vocals in like 2006, which sound completely fucking wrong and awful, and his like modern theatrical voice that's just so dumb. So that's a big tragedy for me. That always annoyed me. But I still, even with Jeanette Landry singing and doing her kind of Susie impression, it's still a great record, and it's still important. But Eva Watts Russell and Peter Kent are doing 4AD. Travis is up and running with Rough Trade. He doesn't have big hits with the Smiths yet, but that's like right around the corner here. We're about to have How Soon Is Now. Factory is still, Blue Monday is really it, at this point, until they become like a proper albums band with Power, Corruption, and Lies. And this is the start of New Order, because Movement is just a Joy Division retreads and trading vocals, and it's just so tentative, and the songwriting isn't there, apart from like Chosen Time is really strong. But yeah, I mean, this is, New Order starts to refashion themselves, and they do it in two different ways. One is, they redouble their own efforts at songwriting, and then they go to New York and they start clocking what's going on, and what, Paradise Garage music and all that. And it's a big moment for them. But, as far as England goes, they kind of, Dreams Never End is also In Between Days by The Cure. That was a famous, another sound alike between those two bands. Blue Monday, The Walk, Dreams Never End, In Between Days. When you think about how they're getting praised for being innovative with electronics, New Order, at the same time, as I mentioned, bands like Echo and the Bunnymen are just getting written off by the British press. And what happens with Echo is they start to get picked up in America as a college rock kind of phenomenon. And that's where they end up really doing the best, with what becomes this massive stretch of exposure by, John Hughes, and you have Bring on the Dancing Horses, and Ocean Rain actually is a big hit. Killing Moon, my sister had Ocean Rain, and I still, the title track, to me, I can barely listen to it. It's so, just because of my own personal history. But it's, I mean, PCL is classic, but PCL is also like, okay, it's really clear New Order is a singles band on Wednesday and an albums band the rest of the week. Like, that record is fucking punishing. I mean, Age of Consent is just like, and Ultraviolence and everything. Like, it's a fucking brilliant, I mean, shimmering, incredible. That's the coda for Closer, like Your Silent Face and that. That's when New Order as an entity, as a band, gets back around. And then with Low Life and Brotherhood and all their albums, that's up until Technique, essentially, they're very distinct and different. I mean, the Low Life album versions of what become these really polished, massively bike pumped up versions of like Shell Shock and then all these big monster 12 inches, like, Touched by the Hand of God and State of the Nation. New Order is so bifurcated, like two fully independent tracks of activity. Leave Me Alone's a good one. But anyway, I thought Killing Moon was a Pavement song for a long time. I mean, if you were born then, I mean, Pavement had been, the Crucial Three joke at, was it Reading Festival or Glastonbury? They're like, this one's dedicated to the Crucial Three. That's an Echo and the Bunnymen joke. They were lifer Echo and the Bunnymen and fall, Anglophile kids in high school and college. No, Subculture 12 inch is awesome. One of these days you'll go back to your home. I fucking love that song so much. I hate Shell Shock though. Subculture has that awesome fucking medieval chintzy little organ thing. I love that song. But yeah, the album version is agonizing. And Bernard's vocals on Low Life, I don't know who approved it. Like, he can't sing. And it even goes through the Brotherhood, like Paradise. Oh my God, it's fucking painful. But anyway. that whole thing of their evolution is, it's just very different. All Pavement covers are terrible. Sorry. That's a very different thing because they continue on those two tracks. And my contrast there with The Cure is that The Cure change everything every time out. Every record, they've got a whole new look, image, kind of gravity to them. Every Cure record is so fucking different, and it's just one guy. Roger O'Donnell, who joined The Cure in '87, has a pretty famous line about it. When they were doing B-sides for Disintegration, they were working up this atmospheric B-side to a love song called Fear of Ghosts. And Roger O'Donnell was like, it was his song, he had brought to the demos. And he was saying to Robert Smith, he's like, I really love what we've done here with my song. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but it just doesn't sound like a Cure song to me. And Robert Smith, without missing a beat, just says to him, as soon as I sing on it, it's The Cure. He's right. It's fucking pretty weird. But he was such a good singer where, Bernard Sumner couldn't, he was all personality, much the same way, Sean Ryder on Happy Mondays is all personality, which is its own rare quality and one that I love. But Robert Smith is like, whether his voice itself is for you, he can really fucking sing. And that's what held The Cure together conceptually. So it's very interesting to me. Maybe like 40 people. I don't fucking know. Oh yeah, the 12-inch has all those bad hits back from the hit days when the samples are all getting triggered off keyboards. And they're like out of sync. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, the extended mix of it, is awful. Agree. What do I think of Weirdo on Brotherhood? Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, Brotherhood. So I still think All Day Long is one of their best songs ever. That's not like popularly known. I mean, that is like the New Order aficionados like signaling song is All Day Long. And it's funny because the keyboards in it sound like another big famous 80s one-hit wonder at the end, the keyboards at the end of All Day Long. Enola Gay. They sound like the keyboards at the beginning of Enola Gay. Everybody's always clocking something. So yeah, we talked about Art of Noise and how they started, and they were great. What was the other big record that Horn did around that time? I totally forgot. Frankie is way later. Because I mentioned 90125. I mentioned, what was the other one? Oh, it was this. This is all CMI, Fairlight, CMI. This is the other one they were working on. Those incredible bells and things I love at the end of that. That's all fucking Fairlight. But yeah, so I started out talking about exactly. I was going to go back into the American thing because I started out talking about the Misfits and how this created this big rift and how the Germs are over and Black Flag are basically like they're on their way to What's the 10.5 and alienating everybody. And so Twin Tone, the Replacements, like they've started out as this trashy joke drunk band, whatever. Husker Du is coming up to Zen Arcade, and they're moving into like real songwriting. So the American like punk thing at the start, all these kind of either novelty or straight like loud, fast, snotty bands, they're starting to broaden their horizons. And so there's the musical kind of evolution and exposition starting to come in because you're going to get, you've got Hootenanny, which has, a signature, like probably I don't want to say the boldest move. I mean, but by American standards, by the standard of what was going on in America at this time, for the Replacements to have done Within Your Reach in '83, that's a big moment. And it's not like I'm saying it's a big moment that was popularly recognized by anybody, but that to me, more than Let It Be, is wild for, I mean, the bands that are around at this time are so, Kill from the Heart, Dix is '83. We talked about Minutemen, What Makes a Man Start Fires, Minor Threat, Out of Step, like the American bands are still very angry and listen to me, fucking, I'm saying, everything sucks. That the idea of getting back into songcraft and songwriting I salute Westerberg for Within Your Reach. I think that is the really shocking thing, because like Wipers are doing Over the Edge. What else was oh, we had my guys here in Boston. I think is this my world was this year, wasn't it? And X broke out and did More Fun. The New World. What else was big? I'm trying to think. Oh, somebody mentioned Negative Approach. Yeah, they came on too. And again, it's like, duh. Like the FUs and all these super, super fucking hardcore bands. That's the norm still in 83. And it's like dumb. It's like dress up bullshit, Mohican, that movie Suburbia I talked about. It's very performative and kind of theatrical in that way. And it's like a phony separation, of these bands performing this attitude and this genre-fied music. And, the Replacements and a couple others start to see sort of cracks here that we're going another way. Because, I mean, what's another big one? Like Rock for Light's a good example of that, I guess, too, because Bad Brains were really, I mean, I don't know that it's like this is the famous record they did on Newbury Street in Boston at the Cars Studio, and it's not. I mean, there's some great shit. You got Attitude and I love Right Brigade. I haven't listened to this in a long time, but the Band in DC, the famous Band in DC compilation, that's got a lot of that stuff that they did with Ocasek, because they weren't necessarily happy with any of the mixes. That was a big controversy with Rock for Light, is that it just sounded like shit. And they basically re-recording like lots of stuff, and it's stupid that it was so rushed anyway. But it's an absolute fucking classic, and I don't know that the 91 reissue mix was fixed it. But at least it gave it more of its due. I mean, the Synchro sound was like a big joke. Not a lot of great shit came out of there. Although they did do a remix of, they remixed, I think, a Cyndi Lauper track or something on the sly. But, for a lot of kids in America, the perception of the concept of punk is like Subhumans, the day the country died. Or I mean, I don't think anybody could have handled or dealt with the Dicks. But, this is like Earth AD is coming out, and the whole like goth horror, fuck you dad, skate culture is coming in, SSD, Suicidal Tendencies debut. Yes, I've cut my own hair since I was 16 because it grows so fast. I could not economically afford to get haircuts. So I've never done it because it's beer money. Why the fuck would I? Yeah, I mean, Suicidal Tendencies debut, you finally start to get, I guess what I'm saying is you finally start to get a little bit of emotion away from like the adversarial sort of controversial anti everything of what Americans had been interpreting punk as. And you can say there are other bands, obviously that were never part of that to begin with. X was never part of that. They had tons of rockabilly, obviously. You can say, what's another good example? Gun Club, right? That's just sort of like crazy out there, West Coast junkie shit. But these ideas of like scenes taking it all the way through, controlling their own like destiny completely, and also sort of controlling the audience. That's all new, and it's solidifying around this time, and it's forming the basis for things like IRS to give you this, or IRS, essentially Miles Copeland bankrolls Urban Music War, which is a strong document of what's going on at this time, because like Joan Jett is already kind of on her way out in some respects. The churn, the kind of turnover of pop is extremely, there's so much acceleration. And a lot of that, yeah, it'll get called out as being like because of how heavy they relied on image, and the image gets tired fast. So Adam Ant can only really have like one, moment, right? Because of it's his look. So the next time he comes out, it has to be a different look. The arch master of that is Gary Newman, who, by this time, I think he's doing the fucking detective Gary Newman records. But, my favorite Raincoats record, Animal Rhapsody, comes out this year. They're still, evolving and trying to keep it together. Animal Rhapsody has the awesome violin version, the dub version of No One's Little Girl, which I heard that when I got to college because they had the 12-inch there, and I burned that out. Pill does This Is Not a Love Song. They're starting to evolve. So this is that's another thing. We didn't talk about what Pill was doing at any time. Because Commercial Zone is all through this period, the famous like Black Album of Public Image Limited. This is Keith Levine's like power play junkie fuck up thing. And man, This Is Not a Love Song was this year in '83. And Levine basically was like they got in a big fight. Wow, that's crazy. You wouldn't expect a band John Lydon's in to get in a fight, but they like blew out, and then Keith Levine like went in his own, like locked himself in a room and said he was going to finish the record based with the tracks they have. And then he was like, well, fuck you. And so he like pressed it himself, paid like 10 grand and just started handing it out in New York. And it was just fucking crazy. Virgin sued him. But that's one, I got to be honest, I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I at some point I'm going to have to think about like shelling out for a real copy of Commercial Zone. But it's hard to validate whether or not it's real. And there's not like a huge payoff. Like Jeanette Lee and John like went, oh my God, it was such a mess. They were like making a movie, and it's such a funny story. But yeah, all the material around this time is leading up to, you know, Pill sort of getting a big hit, because This Is Not a Love Song went to number 5 in England, and then, well, they re-recorded it because it was the, you know, the Commercial Zone version was actually the one that was the hit, as far as I know. But like Bad Life and that were really good, and they were shooting this movie called Cop Killer with Harvey Keitel. And John Lydon was like supposed to be the crazy bad guy. If you haven't seen Cop Killer, oh my God, you gotta. It's so funny. But they were just really distracted. The Live in Tokyo record they put out, you know, again, leaning on the live record shit, just stretching. And then, yeah, he totally goes and gets it all sold out after that. And he gets, what's his name? Yeah, Fire Dances is 83. That's a great record, you know. Kitchen Tapes, Raincoats. That's, I have that right over there. Yeah, I love that. ROIR Records, ROIR Records in America. They did some incredible work. Like if you think about, you know, the Kitchen and everything that was going on in the Mud Club in the early 80s and all that shit. You know, all the Basquiat, you know, fucking you know, all those people. The ROIR Records, their re-releases of stuff in the late 80s and early 90s, like that's when I was first getting into shit. And the Kitchen Tapes was, I was one of the first like things I got from them. I mean, anything, if you go on Discogs, they have so much stuff, so much good shit. Yeah, Pill really did. I mean, people give the album a harder time than I think it needs, because I love This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get. I don't know. It's whatever. People have their own views on it. Doesn't he leave the Banshees and join? No, he got kicked out of the Banshees. He does eventually join Pill. And plays on this legendary object that I have. This is the picture disc 12-inch of Pill's Disappointed that he's on. And I bought this when I was, I think, 14 at a record fair in Boston. It's totally unplayable. Like, the needle just goes, whoop, so I'm not protecting it. But I fucking love Disappointed. That was a great single. This is like 89, but this is one of the best picture discs like ever fucking made. It's so cool. And you know, this is one of the things too. People give, you know, Lydon lots of shit. The art, you know, the art design around a lot of the stuff he's done is pretty smart, because obviously, you know, Sex Pistols, Vivienne Westwood, long lineage history there, so people are eager to work with him. But the choices he makes, I think, are pretty cool. I thought his look in '89 was fucking awesome. Iron Maiden debut is '83. Yeah, I mean, this is now when, forget new wave British heavy metal. This is when like the U.S. radio is like getting primed for poodle rock, and it's not there yet. But you know, I mean, after the whole reboot, you know, poodle metal, it doesn't take long. I mean, when does, because I mean, Suicidal Tendencies this year, so like boom, right there, you're talking about thrash, like, you know, absolutely. Because again, I mean, a lot of people have talked about, you know, how the Germs are kind of, they're almost urging thrash, you know, to come out as a genre. And you know, it's obviously a very West Coast thing at the start. But yeah, I mean, I think there's, you know, a reaction against the kind of, you know, thrash is always like anti-glam, right? That's always been like the big thing of thrash, is the rejection of glam. But yeah, you know, it's by that time, Kill 'Em All is what, August or something. So, you know, you're getting Metallica. I mean, Ride the Lightning is the big, I mean, Fistful of Metal and Ride the Lightning is like, boom. That's like, because they got Overkill out there, and what the hell else coming out? But I mean, 83 is like super, super early. But, you know, there's bands doing it, and it really just like, you know, Slayer comes out in, I think 84 with Show No Mercy, but yeah, I mean, metal's in 83, metal's in a weird spot, because again, like, it is Def Leppard new wave of British heavy metal properly or not? I mean, you got you people have been saying Venom in the chat for a while, you know, like you know, you had a lot of early, you know, dark, what do you would call it, black metal, whatever, happening at that time. But you know, again, it's still, you're talking like Accept and like cheesy, you know, shit at that time. And Dio, yeah, Dio. Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, no, Hello Eights is the full-on thrash record for sure. Yeah, but Dio's 83 too. That's right. So, you know, I guess the whole point of doing a part 2 is just to say that this is a point at which there's a vital, vibrant, real, you know, alternative that if you're paying attention, there's new shit happening everywhere all the time. You know, bands are touring, tours are getting together in the States at this college level. And like I said, the push to get yuppies and you know, newly wealthy suburban people in America to consider college as a requirement for their children is essentially been burning for about 10 years at this point, and it's starting to become accepted. Like, you're going to college. Early 80s, you know, it was an incredibly important wealth signifier to get your kids in school, in good schools, and brag about it. And that just, in the 70s, it wasn't like that yet. It was starting, but it wasn't there. And that is why you get the Talking Heads and all of this this shit, because otherwise it's Sonic Youth, and it's in the cities, and it's hard art, and it's, you know, low life, and it's class A drugs, and it's, you know, boho, LES, Alphabet City shit. And it just takes a long time. But by this time is when you start to get it. And college is a big part of it, because, you know, the colleges will pay the bands to come play. And now you've got kind of a cycle going on that's not so isolated. DRI, yeah, fuck. DRI is the fucking balls, but that's, yeah, they are pretty self-parodic. We talked about Murmur. We definitely talked about Murmur in the kind of overground first 83, because REM was fucking huge. They were on Letterman for that album cycle. I mean, that's not small. I mean, yeah, Letterman was not the Tonight Show, but it's national fucking TV. I mean, REM was big. B-52s were big. You know, but anyway. How do I feel about Aphex Twin dumping a bunch of shit in 2015 in SoundCloud? I sort of am inured with Aphex Twin moves. But, you know, another one of those college things is, you know, Violent Femmes, right? I mean, famously they form outside of they get noticed outside of a Pretenders concert playing for the people in line outside the LA Forum, I think. And, yeah, total cause celebre for this new freedom of privileged suburban kids in America, privileged kids writ large, is having their own music and having college music. And Violent Femmes is just like, it's a massive one. Really, really big fucking deal record. But what was the other thing that happened that was funny? I had another thing I was going to think of that was so fucking funny to me. Can't remember it. Close that shit up. College rock is toast. Oh God, it has been for a long time. Yeah, REM opened for the Police. Yep, that was big for them for sure. And you know, we talked about Go-Betweens sort of briefly. This is their big rush, and like I've talked in other places too about how that college rock thing and the kind of game of telephone that happens on those campuses really helped Flying Nun and a lot of those those acts out there in New Zealand and in Australia. Just weird. But I mean, obviously Go-Betweens is rough trade, so it's coming over, you know, through that. And it was, I mean, it was pretty much, I mean, I don't know if you can call it big, but like, you know, Two Step Step Out. I love that song. But you know, Cattle and Cane is the big one. Cattle and Cane is like, you know, the Replacement's Unsatisfied or whatever. It's a really doleful, beautiful ballad by you know, someone from another part of the world, kind of a thing that, you know, is getting their voice heard. The title track's great. I mean, you know, McClellan and Forster are both hitting so hard on this record. It's definitely an absolute classic, to the extent that I think Spring Hill Fair is sort of almost, I mean, it's overshadowed in a big way. I mean, 5 Words, I love that song. But yeah, they kept it going. I mean, I think they did some cool shit. They kept it going. This Kind of Punishment, yeah, they were. I remember This Kind of Punishment getting a huge revival in the 2000s in message board culture. It was like Pearls Before Swine, This Kind of Punishment. Like, these were bands nobody had heard, and then someone found out about them, and it was this big talking point. But yeah, I've talked about Wipers in like every video in response to people saying, "Did you talk about Wipers?" Like, I don't know what there's to say about the Wipers except that they had 3 bang bang bang, you know, solid records right in a row in the early 80s and were hugely important for everyone in the Northwest. Life's a Riot with Spy vs. Spy. I was at 83, but this is when Billy Bragg, you know, 83 to 85, really all the way to almost 87, back to basics, the con and stuff. This is when Billy Bragg becomes like a cause celeb. I've posted in the Chord videos of him doing like the Smiths Gene and Ask. And that, I mean, that must have bugged Elvis Costello a little bit, because that was kind of his lane originally, you know, one man and a guitar. I just talked about Hootenanny for like 25 minutes, dude. But yeah, it's Billy Bragg's thing was very cool. Hey, what's up, Perp? How we doing? We got royalty, folks. Mr. BuzzFeed on the chat. Matthew Perpetua. Glad you came in, man. I was totally fucking running out of gas. I'm like, because I usually try and do 90 minutes. And this is part 2 of 83, because the first one was just like the Police, fucking Michael Jackson. Like, there's so much big shit. We didn't talk about any of the underground shit on either side of the pond. So trying to get to that. Been going through, you know, a lot of the big hitters, but I was also so fucking annoyed at how bad the audio was on that one. This stupid fucking, I should have got a cheaper, shittier lav mic, because the Shure one the fucking thing that holds the mic in was rocking around. It drove me nuts. Everybody hit up fucking Perpetua in the chat. Let's go. Bang it. Let's get it going fast. Martin, you missed everything. I got signed. I'm not gonna be able to do these anymore. I'm now working for Spotify. I'm gonna be running Spotify's live streams starting May 1st. And it sucks. I'm not gonna be able to do this anymore, but you know, I couldn't refuse. They're offering me, you know, a lot of money. And so who is Perpetua? Matthew Perpetua ran BuzzFeed, a number of aspects of BuzzFeed for a long time. He is a major music critic that I've been friends with for a long time. Maybe like the 4chan Moo people are like so based and out of the fucking loop. Yeah, the quiz guy. He was the quiz guy. But Matthew and I did one of the best podcasts I ever did with Elliot, my college friend, on REM, and he's pretty much like the original MP3 blogger. That's his tag, but it's earned and true. He's been doing Fluxblog MP3 commentary since back when I lived in New York. Yeah, I'm music supervising everything, right? Yes, it was sarcasm, Car. I'm not joining Spotify to do anything. But they're pivoting to podcasts in 2020. Yeah, let's buy Anchor. Man, if I could talk about some of the figures around what Spotify is doing, but I can't. Yeah, so Perp's streaming on Twitch, by the way. He's DJing on Twitch now, sort of during the day, I think. And that's been pretty cool. Just like awesome sets. And Matthew, you've come up a bunch of times in the Discord and even in these chats because you've been doing the annual surveys and these playlists that have just helped so many people find out about so much good music. And I, you know, that obviously we've talked about the C700 projects and back in the Ilk Store days and different ways I had approached years, and I've called out 65 and 83 as these magic years and stuff. In aid of like, I had done like 8 chats that were just literally me holding up records and telling stories, which whatever. But I was like, yeah, we should, I should tighten this up a little bit. So instead, since you haven't been on these, what I've been doing actually is going through the Whitburn books. So I'm going through the Whitburn, the singles charts and the UK charts and the album charts to kind of like, cause I was alive then. And as we've gotten further and further into the 80s here, now we're at the point where I'm like 8, 9 years old. I remember all of this, and I remember it being like fall when certain records were hitting in America. And so it's a lot easier, but it's also, if last night's or last times is any indication, it's really hard to get like a year in because of all the crazy things, particularly in the 80s. And I had mentioned in one of these other ones, it's going to be hard to talk about the 90s because yeah, and it was the early 80s country, you know, soft rock thing was so fucking great. Perpetual rewards. Yeah, that'd be funny. But yeah, I just, you know, when I go back to these periods, it's like I'm going to end up with anecdotes about my own life that are going to, you know, take up the whole fucking thing. But we keep, so many people ask me about Kid Creole and the Coconuts, man. Zay Records was not my scene at all. Like, I'm not into the Mud Club, Lower East Side, Hard Art, Gronk, Mars, No New York. I can't stand any of that shit. I mean, very few and far between. And it was just such a fucking overwhelming, browbeating exercise in the early 2000s when I was at my, you know, peak of sort of music criticism engagement in New York. How many people would just not shut the fuck up about No New York and No Wave and all this fucking shit like it was the most righteous whatever. It's like, oh my God, it was the smallest fucking nothing of insignificant, you know, selfish bullshit. But I mean, every scene is, when looked at from a certain perspective anyway. Los Lobos were huge, man. Yeah, 80, when we get to like 86, 87, god damn, man. And then the whole thing with them, you know, Paul Simon totally fucking ripping them off on Graceland. Like, he stole 3 songs out of jams he was doing with them without crediting them at all. Like, they completely fucking blew him the fuck out in an interview at some point later. Yeah, we talked about Punch the Clock. There's no way that should have been an album of the year from anybody, although I do love it. I love the production. I went off about it, talked about how great the drums are. Lone Justice on Saturday Night Live, famous fucking incident. Yeah. So similar to the way the Pistols end up on the Bill Grundy show because Queen cancels, Lone Justice, is this 83, Matt? Because that's their only claim to fame. There was somebody booked on SNL and they couldn't play, and so this band Lone Justice got to play, and like it made one of their songs a hit for like 2 weeks. I mean, this is like before Cowboy Junkies, before, you know, oh, that's 85. That makes more sense. Yeah, because I was going to say, I don't think it's this early, but yeah, 83 is it's just so fucking ripe, and everything. Pop music is so popular and famous, and Boy George and Michael Jackson are the biggest celebrities in the world. So it's just the amount of money that is forecast to be coming in and is coming in. I mean, you also have, you got to realize you have corporations being merged and bought and acquired because of the bands that are on their fucking record labels. Like, Sony buys CBS later in the decade, like, because it's just crazy, man. Like, everyone's looking at factorially where this is going and the growth. Yeah, we talked about Come Dancing in the first one, how important that song was to me, how it feels like I'm a kid again when I hear it. It's one of my favorite Kinks songs. I was never a Kinks guy at all. Like, I don't like Village Green Preservation Society. You know, I'm not like a Van Morrison guy. I'm not a Beefheart guy. You know, critics love to just come at you and just be like, you fucking have to fucking worship these fucking gods. And I'm like, no, this shit sucks. Frank Zappa blows. Fuck this noise, you know? And I just never really cared about the Kinks except the early mod shit. And Come Dancing, which is like, by the time everybody was like, whatever. I mean, Come Dancing, I have to assume, you know, being an Anglophile, but I have to assume that that song was such a massive echo and sense of national kind of whatever for people in England at that time, because everything was so new and out of touch, and the Eurythmics, and yeah, exactly. Everything is so novelty based, and ABC and Spandau and these new young people. Oh my God, the Eurythmics were huge. I've talked about this over and over again about Annie Lennox and the MTV controversy and all that. I mean, Sweet Dreams and Here Comes the Rain were nonstop FM radio, non-fucking stop, like at the level of Prince. Huge. Love is a Stranger, though, it did chart low, like moderately mid-level, but was nowhere near as big as like we've all come to remember Love is a Stranger being this like incredibly important. Oh, also, I don't think anybody realizes, because it's so weirdly designed and I'm old and fat, but you know what I pulled out today here for this, right? Yeah, what's up? Still got it. Still got all that shit. The British charts of 82 looked exactly like 76. Ah, no way. Come on. I mean, you got fucking so many. I mean, in 83, you could maybe say like Elton John and shit were on there, but you had Dexys, and we've talked before about all that. The Fuck Your Life shirt's coming. It's on the table. The Rockabilly Revival. Yeah, no, that was everywhere. Stray Cats. We went off about that for like, 20 minutes last time. Yeah, it's a year that it just goes on and on and on. You know what I mean? Like, because we talked about Wham, we talked about, we've repeatedly talked about Billy Joel. When you got Red Red Wine, which again, like, this is one of those songs. Red Red Wine was like, so huge. When you think about Come Dancing, Red Red Wine, these are songs to me that just feel like my childhood. We talked about Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant. These things, when I hear them, I'm just transported back to being in single digits. Marine Girls, yeah. Oh man, was it Lazy Ways or Beach Party or both or whatever? Yeah, we did. We've gone over Hall & Oates a bunch and how crazy and successful that whole pivot was for them. To be able to come in when so many other artists were crushed by Image and MTV, and the thing we always talk about, the bubblegumming of genres into 3-minute pop songs, and the incredible production value. Like, all the boogie bands and doobies and all that shit gets destroyed, and the 70s gets laid waste, except for weird, Hey 19 anomalies with Steely Dan and shit. Yeah, it's Paul Young does not. No, he's basically Squeeze. In the U.S., I mean, somebody can prove me wrong, but as I recall, Paul Young, Wherever I Lay My Hat, That's Home, was massive. I don't know that it even charted here. Where, you know, things like Spandau's True, The Police, Every Breath You Take, fucking just slaughter, you know, in the U.S. and Men at Work and all that shit. And we talked about, you know, again, we talked about in the last video that just omnipotent fucking Michael Jackson and how Total Eclipse of the Heart was #1 for like fucking 3 months and just inescapable. But like Paul Young, it wasn't just that. He also had Common People was that too. And Mike Oldfield had a fucking hit. I mean, weird shit. Oh, and Heaven 17's Temptation was this year. That doesn't get over in America. I don't think that charted here at all. That song is fucking rockingly good. That song stomps. Oh my God. Well, you don't like wait, what is it? METHODOF. Fucking Method of Modern Love by Hall & Oates, that like 87 single. That is one of the worst goddamn songs. Holy shit. If you've never heard Method of Modern Love by Hall & Oates, fucking take that shit out tonight. It'll blow your mind that a song this bad was released this late in the 80s. Out of Touch is great, but it's so simpy. I mean, that doesn't even sound like Hall & Oates. It sounds like fucking Phil Collins. I mean, you got to be honest about that. We did talk about Big Country. So one of the things I didn't mention yet, this is a great way to get this back on track. We talked about the emergence of independent artists and actors in the UK, especially, right? The BBC program Play at Home becomes this massive thing at this point. So you had Arena and you have other programs, and you know, we've talked about the live programs and TOTP and Whistle Test and all those things. But the Play at Home series, they start funding these mini documentaries about things like factory records. And they did one on Big Country, and it's horrible. Like, it's the most pathetic, blinkered, like worthy bullshit ever. It's like them loading their own gear in the van and going off to play in a big country, you know, to whoever. It's hard to be flip and make sarcastic jokes about them because, one, I love that fucking song. In a Big Country, if you're a drummer, that song is like in your fucking DNA because the drum production and the performance is so fucking good. I think Big Country's first record is not even wholly. It's not like an album that just has one song on it that was a radio hit. It's not a bad album. They couldn't really go anywhere after that. But their Play at Home is really bad, and like they think they're like righteously fighting the good fight in a way that it's like it's over. You know, we got Culture Club here. And anyway, the Banshees, I was talking for a while about the Glove, the Cure, the Banshees, and all this shit and the Creatures going on. They did one where they all just got shit-faced on Ritzina and played Alice in Wonderland. This shit's all on YouTube. They did one on Factory in New Order where Tony Wilson's naked in a bathtub. I mean, that's almost worse than me naked in a bathtub. It's bad. This show is just terrible. All the Play at Homes are just awful, but they're hilariously fucking out of place and weird and funny. So just look up all the BBC Play at Homes from around this period and see the way that people were trying to market themselves. It's weird because there's not money yet in England. It's not the free money, the crazy money, you know, Fleet Street and all this shit. It doesn't blow up until 85. Like late 84, this is when it's like, oh my God, everyone's driving a fucking 3 Series or a 911 if they're a portfolio manager. Like, the money isn't there yet in 83. The ideas, the pop, the fame, and the kind of support system with the magazines and the labels is there for you to have all this crazy shit happening across different tiers of you know, pop. The Crossing is great. Yeah. Rudimentary Penny. Yeah, I mean, these are really fringe acts that I'm not huge into. I mean, like, you know, but I guess I should tip back to 83 with their charts because I didn't go through them too deeply. We did talk about how the early Wham stuff, it takes for the U.S. record. So this is okay. You need to get Simon Napier Bell's black vinyl white powder. I think or it's either black vinyl white powder or I'm Taking You to Lunch or something. He wrote like 3 books all around the same time that share some of the same stories, which is really annoying. But this is the guy who made Wham happen. He got them out of their contract with this stupid kid, and he fucked them over. You know, so more's the pity for that kid. But the story of Wham, this guy, he knows it all. Now, he doesn't completely gas George Michael or Andrew Ridgeley, but he tells you real stories about what these guys were like at this time in 83 and 84. And he's the one who engineers the kind of like situationist thing for Wham to go to China and make this massive concert stand in China, much the way other bands were trying to get into Russia, like Billy Joel eventually did. Yeah, so I mean, unless they're expensive, they're probably like $4 paperback on Amazon used. Simon Napier Bell's books are actually, he's a very controversial figure that a lot of people think is a piece of shit, but his stories are wonderful. They're written in a wonderful British pomp that you recognize immediately. You know some of it is kind of blown and funny bullshit, but it is hilarious. And he was there for a lot of shit. And this early 80s period, they're relying on this guy who's like an artifact of the 60s, who had like been instrumental in like, I think the Yardbirds too. He's just a legacy music mover and shaker. And he's the guy who makes Wham happen in America, because they tricked the American record companies. They fucked over the American record companies. He came over there and he was getting the record spun on the radio. So the labels that were like, we're not putting out these two, gay looking English guys. This is bullshit. This won't work in America. We know it works here. So he's like, oh, okay. So he gives the fucking records out in LA and New York and gets them on the radio. And they're like going to chart. They're getting so much play. And the record label's like, what the fuck is this? So, I mean, he was a canny fucking dude, a real fucking huckster. I love his books. Obviously, I can't speak to him as a person, but really recommend you get those. Just great reading. And the stories are just like, you can't believe the world is like this. So, I mean, between Simon Napier Bell's books and Dave Rimmer's Like Punk Never Happened, these are really, really important 82, 83 historical documents of Wham, of Culture Club, and of what was going on. And if you go on the Discord and join the Discord, I have a Dropbox. And on that Dropbox, I have a rip of the VHS for Culture Club's Kiss Across the Ocean, which is an awesome fucking live video shot right around this time. And I just at this point, everything is still good with Culture Club. It's still like they're doing Blow but it's not like fucked yet. It's not fucked and sad and awful. And it's still potential. It's still funny anecdotes. It's still things happening. It's still like, it's like Duran. Duran is still, kids screaming at airports for them. It's got that freshness, and they're not jaded yet. And you just want to drink that shit up because it's over in 84. Everyone becomes a complete fucking cokehead. They get too much money and they just become fucking assholes, opening a bottle of white wine at 10 a.m. and just talking shit on the phone to someone from fucking Sounds or whatever. We're not at 7 o'clock yet. We need a couple more little things in here. I went off last time on Tracy Ullman's They Don't Know. It came on my phone today when I was going to the town dump. And I had it so loud. People at the dump were like, what the fuck? God, that song is so, so wonderful. Such a beautiful song. And it's Kirsty MacColl's song, but she's on it. So, I mean, Tracy, it's not like Tracy like did it. I mean, Kirsty MacColl's on the song because Tracy couldn't hit the note for baby, the really high baby, toward the end. She couldn't hit it. So Kirsty's still there on it. And Kirsty got it. And she was with it. Kirsty MacColl was like the most hard drinking, fucking pragmatic, down to earth. Like, she didn't give a fuck about any bullshit. And that's what made it impossible for her to have a career. She didn't give a shit about her weight. Fuck you, whatever. I'm drinking. I don't give a shit. You don't like it, I sing. You don't like my song, don't buy it. I mean, she obviously not her public persona, but the way she handled herself and handled her career is just, it's so fucking amazing. And it's not because she's dead and she died tragically, in a way that obviously really resonates for a parent, but she just did whatever she wanted. She had her Gone Troppo period, just like George Harrison, where she goes and does some fucking totally awful, tropey sub-Caribbean bullshit. She worked with Shane, Fairy Tale New York, quite famously, but she also worked with the Talking Heads. She sings on Nothing But Flowers, which was my wedding dance. And she's in the video with Johnny Marr, weirdly. She just, everything about her is so adorable and real, not in a condescending way, in a way that, like, goddamn, can you imagine having the fucking Stones to just not give a shit. She didn't come from big money or anything. I mean, yeah, she married a very famous producer. And another great anecdote about her is she did the track sequencing for the Joshua Tree because they were stuck. They had some kind of like psychic panic on the running order for the Joshua Tree, U2. And she was in the studio and she just was like, she just laid it out and they were like, how did you figure this out? It's probably on Wikipedia, but her anecdote, her answer is so funny. I guess the complaint about the charts looking like the same as they did in 76 and 83, that's really down to the resurgence of Too Low for Zero, Elton John, and Genesis. But the Genesis of 83 is not the Genesis of 76. This is the Genesis that's going to be, you know, Live Aid Genesis. This is pop Genesis. This is, you know, again, that's all Illegal Alien. Again, and I talked about it in the last one. I love that fucking song, and I don't care that it's like a racist trope. It's great. We did talk Change. I had thought Change might have been hitting in 82, but Tears for Fears Change hits in 83, and God, I love that song. But yeah, Men Without Hats, Safety Dance is just like another one of those signature ones. And somebody mentioned in the chat, Mute Records. You know, I didn't mention them. Excuse me. I didn't mention Mute Records, which I should have, because Depeche was really much in the way that New Order or Joy Division made Factory. Depeche is making Mute. And this is 83 is As Everything Counts is 83. It's a competitive world. Somebody else called out that Cruel Summer was big then. And Rip It Up. Yeah. Orange Juice, Rip It Up was big this year. You two overthink literally everything. Yeah, it's true. We've mentioned how my youngest daughter calls Uncertain Smile the beach song, because I had the comp in the Jeep for a long time, and so whenever she hears the she's like, the beach song. In the Fascist Bathroom, yeah, great fucking book, Real Marcus. You got to get that, and you got to get don't get lipstick traces. Get in the Fascist Bathroom. Who's going to be Joe Biden's VP? Yeah, she was married to Steve Lillywhite. That's why she was in the studio with you too. Yeah. Just going through the comments real quick. Can't wait for 85. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, exactly. It's like Pink Floyd and Waters taking over. Yeah, I mean, like Momentary Lapse of Reason is like that's just not even a Pink Floyd album. It's silly. Yeah, Construction Time again is big. Big record. That's their first big record. But I can't wait to get to Black Celebration, because I mean, that shit. We talked about Porcupine at the top, Matthew, and I talked about how the British press were like sick of Echo and sick of The Cure and sick of the Raincoat Brigade, they always call them. They were sick of mid-tempo, sad, bleary music. There was the new pop was the moment. So, Morley, who had been such a cop the whole time, is now all of a sudden, part of the fabulous new pop, royalty by, working in the studio and making music with Art of Noise and Zang Tum Tum. And, Propaganda, that band was also big around this time, I believe, or coming together. I think 84 is when Propaganda hits. Oh God, when did, what was I forgot to mention them. I don't know what they had going in 83. Yeah. It didn't come out till 84. That's why I didn't talk about it. So this is a gap year, really, for Section 25. We'll get to it next year. But yeah, man, Looking from a Hilltop. Fuck. Yeah, I hit ZZ. I hit Eliminator. Eliminator is guitars and disco. Man, ZZ figured it out. Not even New Order figured that shit out. How do you get wailing, shredding guitars and disco? ZZ Top. She got legs. I heard that on fucking Sirius XM 80s the other week when I was dropping my daughter off at school. It has to be more than the other week, because haven't been doing that in a while. But man, fucking, you can't turn off Legs when that shit comes on. I mean, that's just great. Sequencers and yeah, propaganda. Well, we're gonna have to get Bruce Levenstein into the fucking live streams and chat, because he is the propaganda like guy. So, this guy on Twitter, he's just got the most like hardcore, like not cold wave per se, but just like all that really underground mini pops, like early 80s hardcore obscure new wave shit. He's the fucking oracle on that shit way more than me. Like there's like a propaganda, like, I don't know if Benelux, he's British. Oh, that would explain a lot of it. There's like I don't know if Factory Benelux or Le Disque du Corpu did it, but there's like a propaganda box set or like comp or something that has all this shit. Yeah, he's a major oracle of that. And then there's the what's that other Twitter account that's like Birmingham 81 pics or something? This guy who's got like daily photographs of New Order from 1981, or he's just like, he pulls out the craziest shit on Twitter. Sparks, yeah, major blind spot for me. The band Sparks just never. I mean, they were huge for some people. Sparks are as important as Suicide, you know, but just never did anything for me. Yeah, Styx. We talked about Mr. Roboto, and I wrote the article Paranoid Chant. It's on my Substack, I think. If not, the Medium shit's probably still there. But Google up Shallow Rewards Paranoid Chant, and I have a whole article about the racism of Mr. Roboto and the the anti-Sino, anti-Japanese sentiment that was pervasive in the auto industry and across really all of American society at this point. Because they felt that the Japanese were undercutting Americans on consumer electronics as well as automobiles. It was a very racist time. It's pretty fucked up. I mean, you got to remember there's a movie called Gung Ho that's about to come out. Yeah. I don't think Michael Keaton I believe he was in that, is real proud of that shit, and he shouldn't be. The thing about Mr. Roboto is it's not even a fucking good song. It's a piece of shit new wave throwaway song. It fucking sucks. Plus, have you seen the movie they made? It's amazing. They made a fucking movie called like Escape from, I don't even remember, but like I wrote about it in this article. There's like a fucking totalitarian government that's banned rock, and Styx is going to rebel and reclaim rock and roll. It's so fucking embarrassing. God damn. Oh, that's an awesome comment to call out, Matthew. Yeah, Owner of a Lonely Heart, you would have no idea who that is. You just think, wow, is this like, because I talked earlier about Golden Earring and Twilight Zone and The Fix. Yeah, one thing leads to another. Like if you hear Owner of a Lonely Heart, how the fuck would you ever think that was Yes, unless you grew up at that time and had that iconic gray, album cover with the blue, yellow, pink circle in the middle. Like that was an iconic album cover in my childhood. Yeah, I just went off on Red Red Wine. I fucking love that song. So fuck you, Martin. It's not Yes, it's a studio joke. Like, who knows? The production on that song is so fucking good. You got to be shitting me if you're going to tell me you don't like Owner of a Lonely Heart. It's great melodies, great pop. Like, who gives a shit who wrote it and if they were old? Watch the video though. Watch the drummer. He's got like he's like balding. He's got like a fucking red bandana around his neck. And there's a scene in the beginning of the video. I'm just going to do an impression of it. Fuck it. Where he's playing Owner of a Lonely Heart. And he's like got the angriest expression. It's like, dude, this is like 120 BPM. Fucking chill. Like it's just mid-tempo pop. And he's like, it's the most basic drum beat. It's so bad. But yeah, the singer went through this. He tried to get like a huge blonde curly mullet and get 80s-ified for 90125. God, yeah, it's some grim shit. Do I think the Birthday Party deserves legendary set? Nope. Birthday Party, no interest. Never liked him. Don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck about Nick Cave at all. Never did. No fucking time for anything he's ever done. Fucking figure that out. I mean, there's plenty of people who'd say the same thing if they were honest about themselves about Sonic Youth. I fucking love Sonic Youth, but in the same way that I have no fucking interest in Nick Cave's entire recorded history, there are plenty of people who are like, Sonic Youth sucks, but they won't be honest with themselves most of the time because they get browbeat by critics and they get browbeat by consensus that like this music is hugely important and foundational and you are not a real music fan if you don't listen to it. Like people just need to be more fucking honest about what really hits them. It's just fucking stupid. This is what's always driven me nuts. Like, you're not a critic because you know about music. You're a critic because you have opinions about what music is good and what music fucking sucks. No one says anything sucks anymore. It's not allowed. It has to be the most obvious, basic shit that you can safely trash or tranche. Yeah, I don't know. My claim to fame is I went to uni with a guy who went to the same school as Nick Cave's son. I socially maybe would not make that a claim to fame. Do I feel the same way about Bog? Yeah. Man, Liszt is really overrated. Anyway, yeah, we're up in an hour and a half. Trevor Horn has produced everything. You wouldn't think the video killed the radio star. He would have produced Yes and Tattoo. Well, I mean, you know, you would, because if you put a guy like Trevor Horn or Martin Rushton in a studio, they're going to get you where you want to go a lot fucking faster than anyone else. So their exorbitant rates are justifiable because they can do things faster than other people. And that's what you understand when you go into the studio with a real producer. It's like, oh, that's why you're a famous producer. The thing I said, you just made it real in like 30 seconds, you know? If you're not a musician and you've never sort of been in those environments with established producers, you don't understand how crazy that is. When you see it, you're just like, holy shit, wow. Now, some producers are different. Some producers have like an identikit of the same shit they do every time. Like Hugh Padgham kind of does the same shit every time out. Horn is a guy who could do a lot of different shit. Martin Rushton's a guy who could do a lot of different shit, a lot of different ways. And it's, that's true too. Not everybody deserves the producer thing, that tag. You know, Eno absolutely does. And people love to clown on Brain One because he's so pretentious and has been so full of shit at various points in his career. That's funny that he does that, but it takes nothing away from what he does in his studio. I mean, seriously, if you listen to the Joshua Tree, and then go listen to like Coldplay shit, go listen to Milo or Viva. The density of the sonic template that Eno creates, there's nothing else like it in the history of music. If you've listened to enough music and you listen to an Eno production, it's astonishing. Like, it's just nothing else sounds like it. The choices he makes are so, the minutia and the attention to separation, and also like the temperature. This is really esoteric, but the temperature of the instruments and the temperature of the kind of general frequency response. It's totally unheard of. The continuity in his productions. And that's another mark of another type of legendary, producer. I mean, Tony Visconti is another big one in the 70s. He doesn't really blow too much out of the water in the 80s, but yeah, I know it's kind of but again, you use words like temperature when you've been in the studio enough, Do I give Lanois credit? Yeah, Daniel Lanois is a hugely important figure. I mean, the Cocteau Twins kind of wouldn't really be where they are without a lot of the work that he was doing. Daniel Lanois, is all over Apollo. And God, I mean, Apollo is just, God, it's so good. Silver Morning, that's a big Daniel Lanois song. And then he's there, with U2, and he's there with Eno in a lot of these. And yeah, he worked with Gabriel. All right, anything else? It's been about an hour and a half. I really can't ask her to watch 4 Kids at Bedtime for much longer. Anything? Come on. 1 more, 2 more little things. I think the first hour of this was solidly, about the concept of the underground being established around this time. I look like a hipster Lou Costello. Okay. Yeah, Pylon's Chomp. That's their only real big LP, I guess. Yeah, that's sure. Steve Ott, yeah. Steve Ott, he's on the Sabres, man. Right? Yeah, no, we talked about Murmur a bit. Matthew, we mostly talked about how REM hit really big quick and had a lot of backing from A&M and the Miles Copeland kind of thing with IRS. So yeah, well, I'm a big Sabres fan, so that's why I know Steve Ott. How did I get hair that sick? Scottish, French genes, I don't know. Have I read much Smash Hits? Oh yeah, I've got the whole Face book. I've got Smash Hits. I've got fucking all that shit. I mean, the library of books I have is fucking unending. I have the Cream book. I have the Mute Records book. I have all that shit. Do I think sports will be back? What do you mean? They're going to reissue Huey Lewis in the News Sports? Everything will be back eventually. I mean, you need a haircut. No, I don't. Yeah, REM was, and Matthew, sort of the thrust of this, the English side of the conversation is about how the record labels, the indie record labels, become like a self-sustaining thing around this time and separate, and you have these two tiers of activity with chart pop, new pop, and then you have like kind of indie saying like, well, we can control this, you know. Yeah, I went off on it in the beginning of the last video. Heart and Soul is a heavy metal song. It absolutely fucking shreds. Heart and Soul is just fucking hardcore as fuck. But yeah, the Face and Smash Hits are just like absolutely cracking it at this point, and those covers are so iconic. And you know, again, like I said, I have the big coffee table book with Kate Moss on the cover. And yeah, you go through and you see also, like, I think if you read In Their Own Right, you know, the history of British kind of music journalism stuff, they talk about, I think at this time there was a really bad strike, right? That fucked everything up for a lot of the big line IPC titles. 84, yeah, 84 is big, but it's like you can get through Prince and Van Halen in like 10 minutes. I mean, 84 is Relax and Frankie in the Pleasure Dome in the UK. That's kept out by things like 1984, you know, Panama, etc., Purple Rain. And again, in 82, and I think in 83, when I talk about these years, again, I'm talking about how there's no air between, you're either a top 10 record or just you're not really, you're lucky if you're considered like a one-hit wonder thing. There's no space between what's big and what's defining pop culture and the rest of the shit. It's like a fucking wasteland of just random whatever. Yeah, what the fuck? I was going to go into that. That's 83. Eddie and the Cruisers is 83. I thought it was 84. On the Dark Side is like one of my favorite fucking songs ever. I've gone off on that a million times. I just listened to it in the car today too, after Tracy Ullman's They Don't Know. I thought Eddie and the Cruisers was 84. I guess I had it wrong. Well, that's an important thing to cover because that movie was fucking huge. Eddie and the Cruisers is like the prototypical. That was a big movie for being such a fucking disaster of a production. It did way better than anyone expected it to. And that video for On the Dark Side was a big rotation. Like, you know, this is also, we talked about Rick Springfield and how this is the prefab, you know, dream pinup, you know, dream boy. The teeny bopper thing is like way back in swing here. And that's been gone for a long time. Very deeply uncool. That's like Tiger Beat, Monkeys shit. Like, we don't do that anymore. That pinup shit is back big time. Eddie and the Cruisers, massive fucking pinup flash. And On the Dark Side is John Cafferty. That's not their only hit either. They were great. But anyway, yeah. In Their Own Right is a great read. You really just need it. Oh, wow. I didn't know he did a history of the face. I'll have to check that out. Thanks, Martin. Clock DVA, early Clock DVA is fucking awesome. Meat Puppets 2, yep. No, Zen Arcade's 84. We're talking about 84 now. Yeah. We'll get into that. No, everybody thought that On the Dark Side was a Bruce Springsteen song because it sounds like Bruce Springsteen. I mean, obviously. No one was trying to halt that impression. But it's just a classic. It's like, you know, and I went off a long time about John Cougar Mellencamp, John Mellencamp. But it, you know, it's John Cafferty was, they were around for a long time. The Beaver Brown Band, it's, yeah, wow, it was 83. Eddie and the Cruisers was 83. That's fucked. Was it late 83? Yeah, it was. Okay, so it's September 83. I must have talked about it because it would have charted. I mean, it was a big fucking hit. It went to number 7. I don't know. I must have talked about it. And they had a, you know, I don't know, because then they rushed out and they did like a sequel to Eddie and the Cruisers that was so incredibly bad. Oh my God. People didn't even remember that. But you know, I got it. Like, I'm not going to stand for fucking John Cafferty, the Beaver Brown Band. They're from fucking Rhode Island, man. I mean, they're from fucking Narragansett, like Gansett, fucking the beer that Robert Shaw drinks on the boat in Jaws, Narragansett, you know. Tough All Over, man. CITY. When we get into 85, those guys were big. Like that whole Scarecrow fucking Live Aid, Farm Aid shit. Like not Live Aid, Farm Aid. The whole like middle America fucking, you know, Del Fuegos shit. Like they were Tough All Over was right the fuck in there. But yeah, you know, one of the things I just Googled this up. Because Tender Years was a big hit, and yet in the Wikipedia article they say right at the top that they were ignored because everyone thought they sounded too much like Bruce Springsteen. But Tender Years is a great fucking song. I think Tender Years is the one that actually was more likely to be a kind of Dog's Body sound-alike for Bruce, even than On the Dark Side, because that really fucking sounds like a Bruce Springsteen song. Yeah, we talked about Pink Houses. I talked about that was a really big record for my sister and then me. I still love and I love Mellencamp. And we talked about Boz Seger too. We covered a lot of this shit. So, all right, I got to shut it down, guys. It's almost 7:30. I got to get the kiddos to bed. But pretty good hang. You know, I'm trying to keep going with them. You know, at least, you know, I'm trying at this point. I'm trying to do like every other night if I can. You know, they'll be out there. Thanks, Matthew Perpetua, for coming in. We roped in one of my old school bros, man. And somebody's got, so here's the homework, right? Somebody's got to make a collage of all the collage in the back and then the fits and the watches. And we'll get like a big mood board going. We can do a fucking Shallow Rewards Discord starter pack, right? Let's get that going. Need the reggae coverage. I mean, dude, really. You know, we talked about Steel Pulse early. I will talk about it, but I'm not going to fucking uncork reggae for anybody. Have a good night, guys.